Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Wreaking Havoc. I'm your host, Lucas Botkin, and for this episode, we are joined in studio by Brandon Wombough. He's a former MARSOC operator, might be the right term. Is that the right term?
We'll clarify.
We'll clarify, excellent. Former military guy who joined T.REX a few years ago. He's been a content creator. He's been involved in testing and evaluation of product and helping us curate through all of the thousands of different products out there so that we can provide the best options to you guys over at TREX-ARMS.com. To start off, let's just dive straight into figuring out who this Brandon guy is. But I want to remind you guys that this show is being produced live. What that means is, for those of you who are here in the chat, here on YouTube, you can send in questions, and our production team upstairs is looking for good ones, ones that are productive, screenshotting those, throwing them into a folder here, and we'll be going into some of those questions at the end of some of the discussion that we're going to have. So if you guys have questions directly for Brandon about his time in service, about his time transitioning from the military into civilian life, go ahead and submit the question. If it's a good one, it'll get screenshotted, and if we have time, I will get to it. With all that said, Brandon, why don't you give us a 4-minute sort of summary of your life as you were growing up, and what led you to joining the military and being in a special operations unit?
Sure, you weren't kidding about the questions. So first and foremost, I'm a wretched sinner redeemed by Christ, saved by no merit of my own, just by the grace of God. And that's kind of important because that's who I am today. Mm-hmm. That wasn't who I was growing up whatsoever. So growing up, was really big into sports, just like majority of kids. So played ice hockey, I played golf. And then freshman year of high school, I realized that I was not NHL material.
Right, yeah.
So I decided to join the Marine Corps. So the Marine Corps was not a backup solution for me, much like a lot of people join for benefit reasons and stuff like that. I kind of was motivated by 9/11, and that was something I saw sitting on the floor about to go to first grade one day, and that was actually my first motivating factor for joining the Marine Corps. So through high school, that's what I prepared for through going to the Pool E program is what you call it. It's just the recruiting station, and that was just going to workouts and whatnot, even before I enlisted. So officially enlisted, if I remember correctly, summer of junior and senior year. Enlisted, I actually had a contract to be an 0331 machine gunner. So that's pretty rare for people going active duty. It's not too uncommon for reservists. But anyways, I ended up going with an open contract just to get to boot camp a little sooner. So I ended up going right after I graduated high school, and then I ended up with, if I have to remember correctly, it was communications and electronics was like an open contract. So it ranged from everything from radios, to radio maintenance, to even some other MOSs in that field. So ended up landing on communications. So actually found out what my job was when I was in SOI. So
an SOI is what?
School of Infantry. So
okay.
It's different for infantrymen comparatively to as what a lot of people hear as POGs, right? So
okay, so not women. Oh, okay, that's what I thought you were talking about.
So when I remember coming up on graduation, it was like a week away or something. I got my MOS, and it was data systems operator or something. And I was just like, This is literally what I joined the Marine Corps to get away from, was computers, and here I am. And it was actually a huge blessing. So my main focus when I joined was to get to the fight and get to the fight as fast as possible. So I never cared about titles. I didn't care about having the cool guy title or anything like that. I just wanted to get overseas and get into it. And this was actually the fastest path for that. So I went to comm school. Graduated as honor grad there, and then there was a kind of a pilot program for sending guys straight from communication school to MARSOC.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't remember how many it was that got looked at, but there's a screener, and 20 of us essentially got selected for it, and then I went straight to MARSOC from there. So I got to MARSOC when I was 19, which is extremely soon. So we checked in, and then a bunch of private first classes and lance corporals, and everyone else is like staff sergeants and above. So it was just kind of an interesting environment, but when I got there, I realized hey, this is actually legit. I'm not just in training anymore. This is, I'm in the big leagues now, and I have an opportunity here to get to what I wanted, which was getting to the fight as fast as possible. So, so that leads me to the first thing you mentioned. Am I an operator or not? By definition, no. So there's 3 MOSs in MARSOC. You have SUs, so those special operations officers, 0370s. You have 0372s, critical skills operators. And then you have 8071s, which are special operations capability specialists, and that's what I was. So the way SUs and CSOs works, pretty cut and dry on where their paths go. They're going to get through school, go to a team, and that's where they're going to live, and they'll rotate to the schoolhouse every once in a while, and they may do some other billets For SOC Cs, the Special Operations Capability Specialist, and then the C stands for Communications. There's other ones. So you have enablers like dog handlers, EOD techs, SARCs, so our Special Operations Reconnaissance Medics, even logistics guys, and our intel guys are all SOCs, right? So that's where all of those MOSs land. Our field is a little weird because your selection based on where you go for your job, whether it's a team, a company level, battalion level, regiment, whatever, is how you're assessed through training. And then I went straight to a team after the schoolhouse, and I stayed on a team my whole time until I became an instructor my last year. And I became an instructor because I was on the process for medical retirement, so kind of got benched.
So how much time was it between, you enlist, you go through the whole training pipeline, you go into selection for MARSOC, and my understanding is you never deployed as a Marine conventional individual, you were moved straight into the pipeline. How much training time are we talking about from you going, I want to be in the Marines, I want to get to the fight, before your first deployment?
It was about 2.5 years. So that's from boot camp to School of Infantry to communication school, and then the communicators pipeline at MARSOC. So it was MNOC, so it's MARSOC Network Operator Course, and then there's ANOC and ENOC, and that's just advanced, and then enhanced Network Operator Course, SEER, and then STC, which is Special Operations Training Course, like SOI on steroids for enablers. All of that pipeline is much condensed now. It's much shorter. It's just more efficient nowadays than it was when I went through. So that took about, it's like 7 to 9 months or so to get through all that training at the MARSOC level, and then waiting times between courses and whatnot.
Did you feel like on your first deployment, like you had enough training and education that you felt confident once you arrived, or did you feel like, man, there's still a whole lot I need to learn from the other guys that are here, or were you like, hey, I've spent enough time training, I want to see some stuff, I'm pretty confident I can do things now?
Yes and no. So when it came to my job, actually, I think I was most proficient in my job leaving the schoolhouse, because it's just a shotgun of information, especially on the communication side of things. It's very technical. You have guys, if you have any sort of IT background, if you work in the IT field whatsoever, guys are basically Cisco certified in some way, whether it's CCNA, which is like kind of high level routing and switching, or cybersecurity and stuff like that. Actually, you need Security Plus certified by CompTIA just to deploy as a communicator, and have admin rights, which majority of people in the civilian sector is like their first cert they're working to get. It's not an easy cert to get. So all that to say, it's a very high technical level of proficiency. When it comes to like the tactical side of things and learning, shooting and moving and stuff like that, definitely behind the curve on teams, but that's how everyone is regardless of MS when they show up to a team. A team kind of takes guys from probably 40 to 50% and gets them up to that 100%, and every team's different. So I learned quite a bit during the workup, but when I got to deployment, I didn't necessarily really have any questions other than like, okay, is there anything that's different when we're actually doing this for real compared to like we're being assessed, through our workup and whatnot? So I thought it was pretty good. Interesting.
Well, the reason I asked that is there's a lot of civilians, and I would say myself included at different times, where I felt like whether it was the firefighting stuff I did 10 years ago or was shooting, where I felt like, hey, I got it figured out after training for a certain amount of time. And I think it's interesting that an individual like yourself and a lot of others that I've talked to will be in a training pipeline full-time, 5 days a week for a year and a half, 2 years, however long it is, and will still feel like they're not fully prepared for combat, for the theater that they're deploying to. And meanwhile, we have various citizens across, probably some of you guys watching this right now, who take a 2-day CQB class, you go run around the woods for 3 days, you take a couple shooting classes, and you think you have it all figured out. And then we have guys who are being professionally trained in the military, in the military-industrial complex, that entire pipeline for special operations, who still feel like they don't know everything, they don't know enough, and they want to know more before they feel fully capable. And I just think that is a testimony that the average person listening to this should not take for granted. That simply going to a few courses or doing stuff once a month for a year, like, it will give you more preparedness than doing nothing, but it is not going to put you on the same playing field as someone who's been trained like yourself or some of the other guys out there.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like pretty arrogant with what I was saying, because the level that guys were that have been on the teams for years comparatively to me just showing up was leaps and bounds above me, right? Yeah. It's something about experience brings so much more proficiency to your current skill set, even though you had the same basic training beforehand. Yeah. So we were prepared to not be a liability, I would say, but every day you were learning something. And when I left after my 2 deployments and even a year of being an instructor, there was, I would say, students that would probably still knew more than me. It's
Yeah.
So.
How many guys when you were there, and a lot of these questions, just so you guys are aware, I have not sat down and talked to Brandon about, because we're working every day at T.REX doing stuff, so I'm learning stuff, which is fun. But once you got, you're on a deployment, how many deployments did you do?
2.
You did 2 deployments. So your first deployment, you're there, you've done all the standard skill assessments, you've gone through the pipeline, you're there now. How many guys did you see during your career who kind of, once they were in, they were hitting their assessments, they were hitting the shooting proficiency tests and everything else. How many guys did you see continue to push themselves past the standard, or the bare minimum they needed to have to be on the team, versus the guys who were just like, hey, I'm good now, I don't have to do a whole lot? That's something that I've run into in my limited experience, spending time with military guys. There are kind of those 2 types of guys out there. The guys that get there and then they're complacent, the guys that they're not content, and they usually keep moving up along the ranks into different units or organizations. Is that something that you saw where you were at, or was everyone a go-getter?
Majority of people are go-getters. And that was primarily driven by 2 things. Team culture, actually 3 things. Team culture, the leadership within the company level, and then the mission set. So MARSOC has this saying, every day is selection, and I think that's actually really true. Guys, they had no hesitation firing guys and getting them off of the combat deployments, because they were very, very few. So I was very fortunate to be on those deployments. So if you look at the 3 battalions, there's 4 companies in each, 4 teams per company. So you're looking at a lot of teams, and only 2 companies are deploying to the combat areas. Or so 2nd Rated Battalion, only 2 of those. All of those companies are deploying there, but only 2 teams per company were deploying there. So very few were going there, and they had no problem firing guys to get someone that wanted to be there. And so when it came to like being a go-getter, dudes wanted to be in the fight. That's all anyone cared about. They didn't really care about. That was the best part about the culture. Although maybe we'll get to culture in MARSOC later. But the one good thing about culture in MARSOC is guys didn't care about. This is going to sound bad, but they cared more about doing the thing rather than being a Marine. That's the best way I could put it.
No, I totally get what you're saying, because I would say in the last, 6 years, there's been an explosion in the professional veteran, or even I'd say really the last decade, the last 6 years, of guys who want to appear, and this is from just my experience talking to other veterans about this, going to schoolhouses and talking to guys who are active, who knew so-and-so, who's now an influencer, and talking to them. There is this culture that as soon as someone gets out of the military, they can be this professional veteran celebrity, and it turns out they were a horrible teammate, they got fired from their particular job, they got moved around. Consumers like myself may not know that, unless we're connected with people. And for a lot of consumers are taken advantage of, and that really sucks. So I totally hear what you're saying, and that's really cool to hear that your team, especially just from the leadership standpoint, had no problem removing guys quickly who maybe didn't want to be there, were a toxic influence, were holding the team back. They could get a new guy and go through that. How many times did you actually see that happen?
So I don't think I actually ever saw it. I will say my first team, I don't know if I can say team numbers and whatnot, but it was a serious effort to get on that team. That was the only team that I'm aware of, and there's definitely others that had guys that were on that team for 3 or 4 deployments that went to Afghanistan and Iraq, and then Iraq, Syria, like what we did. So I didn't see it too much on that team. And the thing about that team that was so fantastic, you would think that like, hey, you got to be the next great thing to be on this team with us. But they would take guys, the new guys on the team, and they would build them up. So their main effort was getting guys up to their speed, because they knew that they were going to be replaced at some point. So they wanted to make sure the next guys were the next great thing to replace them, rather than just like, hey, get out of here, we'll just find the next great dude. So that was the leadership part that I was trying to get to, is they were all about building dudes up, which was fantastic.
That's awesome. Well, I've got a few photos here, some deployment pictures that I think is great that you have, that I want to show some folks. And for those of you that are listening in podcast form, apologies, but also not really. You should really tune into the live show or watch it afterwards. So you can kind of talk us through what we have here on the screen. This is you holding some sort of fancy electronic device, I'm assuming for drone stuff.
Yep, so aside from communications, the main job I did was fly drones for surveillance reasons. So this was on my second deployment. My second deployment, we kind of finished up the Mosul clear back in early 2018. And this is one of the last cities that we were clearing. So went up to this rooftop after there was, this city was just cleared that day, actually. So buildings are still on fire and whatnot. And there's a river on the other side, and there's some exchange of gunfire going back and forth. Yeah, I just went up there with a little quadcopter and was doing my normal thing of trying to get some strikes off. So I actually got a strike off with that thing.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I see no chin strap. Did your helmet ever fly off?
Nope, never wear a chin strap. Probably never will.
Nice. Here's a photo of you with some teammates, it looks like, unless that's host partner forces who are just looking like you guys.
Yeah, we got some. So there's 2 dudes there that aren't on my team, but 2 dudes were. So I started the deployment carrying a.
That's an SR-25.
Yep. So I did have. So I would go back to what my job title was real quick. I had a very unique experience in my job title. Majority of dudes in the 8071 MOS, so 80% to be exact, don't ever go to a team. So the 20% that do, that's usually only 1 deployment. So I did 2, and I was slated for the 3rd. So I had a very, very unique experience, and that was I was asked by name to go on that 3rd deployment. So we had extra 308 gas guns.
Nice.
Other guys didn't want to carry them, so I was like, hey, someone teach me how to do this. And my best friend, who's not in this picture, was a sniper, and he spun me up, and Will, the other guy that's holding the rifle there, he helped out too. So that was our first or second op on our 2nd deployment.
So you're a sniper?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Cry MBAVs, very nice. Fanny packs. What's in the fanny pack? Medical?
Medical, yep. So everyone only wore the MBAVs. I don't know of anyone that really wore the AVSs. So we got AVSs and MBAVs issued. Right. We wore AVSs for the workup, just for doing like DA stuff.
Yep.
But for this stuff, we were in vehicle so much that the MBAV just made the most sense. And as the deployment went on, we had less and less stuff on our kit. Our engagements were always 800 meters plus, so we were using heavy weapons for the majority of things. But 2 Canadian dudes in the middle there. So
nice, very cool. How much? And this is, I'm also interested, but this is the kind of information I feel like just isn't out there. In these deployments that you were in, what % of these deployments were small arms fire versus drones, larger strike capability, and not even small arms related?
So my deployments were very different from Afghanistan. So Afghanistan was, from my understanding, majority small arms. The Iraq deployments were primarily heavy weapons. So we got very few small arm engagements. The only time we actually did, I think I had 2 on my first deployment. In my 2nd deployment, we had once the Kurdish forces kind of collapsed after ISIS fell, GOI came in and started taking over what the Kurds took. Things got a little squirrely there because there may or may not have been some Iranian forces involved. So, but,
interesting. Cool.
So if I had to give a percentage, less than 5%.
Less than 5% small arms. Everything else was stuff like this. I have a photo pulled up whenever we swapped to it of you throwing a small remote-controlled airplane.
Yeah, that's
what it looks like.
That's one of my favorite pictures, actually. So,
it's great, dude.
That's a super common aircraft, even in conventional forces. It's called the Puma. This is primarily how we conducted operations. So we would go to that berm there. That's literally a line drawn in the sand between good guys and bad guys. It's called the FLOT, forward line of troops. And we would go there, and what our objective is to expand that into ISIS territory. So we would go there, throw those drones up, and we would conduct airstrikes that way. And they would fly anywhere from 200 meters out to 10 clicks, just depending on how far away things were from certain observation points. And that was me launching one out of the bed of a Silverado. Yeah, there you go. And that's actually probably the same photo. Yeah.
So you literally just hold it in the air, pick up speed.
Yep, there's 2 ways to do it. You can throw it. Some people aren't too good at that because they're a little heavy for how big
they
are.
weigh, roughly?
Probably like 10 pounds. They're just kind of awkward.
Was that classified? Oh, well.
No, not at all. I'm pretty sure you can buy these, actually, but they're expensive.
Oh, we should buy one. How much do you think they cost?
Oh, they're 6 figures.
Let's buy one. Let's do it. Let's sell some guns in the armory and buy one of these suckers. And you can also just do it handheld, just chuck in the sucker.
I flew these a lot, so I was pretty good at throwing these. I have a lot of time looking through the cameras on that thing.
That is wild. No explosive, no payload.
Not on this one.
Not on that one.
Nope.
Interesting. No, that is very cool. So when you transitioned out of the military, so you did the 2 deployments, and I know there's a lot more stories there that we could obviously talk about. But what was it like when you were getting out, medically retiring and moving into civilian life? What did that kind of look like?
It started off really rough. So after my 2nd deployment, I went to selection for another unit, actually a Tier 1 unit. And I was not selected based on human factor issues. So I was actually going through a divorce at the time. And that was the reason why I was asked to come back to selection once all that cleared up. So that was like the start of things going downhill.
Right.
So I ended up going to be an instructor while I had some of my TBIs or traumatic brain injuries looked at. So my pace slowed down quite a bit, and I mentioned this because the transition was very slow, and it actually worked out for me really well. So after a year of being an instructor, I went to Wombough Battalion, where I officially got put on the med board, or the medical evaluation board, to get determined if I should be medically separated or retired or not. And that process took almost 2 years counting my instructor time. So my transition was really slow because I wasn't actually 100% sure what was happening.
Right.
So the whole time, I had this thought in the back of my mind, maybe I'll get back to the teams, maybe I won't, maybe I'll end up going to selection again.
Right.
And it never happened. But anyways, as I got to Wombough Battalion, I ended up getting a full-time day job because I wasn't allowed to go to work because of COVID and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to work just basically in the mornings. So I worked at a gun shop full-time, and that transition really helped. So at the gun shop is actually where I learned the majority of my information about the industry. So it was a very unique gun store. We built ARs, or assembled ARs, from scratch off of parts off the wall. Probably the coolest gun store you'll ever see. And then actually, I got to take a step back from there. So before that, when I was still at MARSOC, is when I came out to T.REX to interview for the first time. So I knew I wanted to work at T.REX before I got it out. So that was 2019, I think, or 2018.
Yeah. One of the first times you came out. You came out a couple times.
Came out 3 times. So the timing of things is, you can call it whatever you want, but it was like, it was divine presence is what it was. So I came out for an interview. A year and a half later, Colonel Dahl reached out to me again, was like, hey, do you know when you're getting out? Do you want to come work here? I was like, yeah, I want to come work here, but I have no idea when I'm going out. I'm on this med board. I don't know what this means. And then literally another year goes by, and Colonel Dahl reached out to me again. So I've been waiting for this whole time. I'm just waiting for a phone call to tell me what.
And the funny thing is, your name came up so many times in meetings, and it's like, well, we don't know what's going on with him. And it's like, well, call the guy. Let's find out what's going on. We want him.
Yeah, it was wild. So I was waiting. You know, the med board official was 13 months, and basically during that wait, it could be, you can wait for a year and a half, or you can wait a month, and you're just waiting for a phone call to tell you, like, hey, your results are in. So that's all you're waiting on this whole time.
Jeez.
And so I'm waiting this whole time, and the day I get the phone call, Colonel Dahl emails me again. Was like, hey, are you still interested in T.REX? And I was like,
nice.
Actually, yes, and I know when I'm getting out. So scheduled the last interview, and then.
What was it like at the gun store? Like, your first week there, you've done all this military stuff, you walk in, you're now dealing with, I'm assuming you were on the customers, you're dealing with customers directly. What was that experience like?
I'm still not a very personable person. So I was pretty arrogant. I wasn't a Christian yet either. So I had a lot of learning to do. I had a lot of learning of how to serve people and, just be a nice human, basically. But I actually grew to appreciate it quite a bit. I loved helping people pick out their gun parts and then assemble it, and then like, hey, this is the gun that someone's going to take home to defend or train with. And it was like a one-of-a-kind AR because it was built from scratch. So I loved the gun store, loved it.
That's awesome. That's really good. I've definitely seen that translate over into how you started creating content for T.REX. So for you all who are unaware, when Brandon came on board, he came on board as a customer service representative. So he was on the CS team, sending emails, responding to some of you guys, and then transitioned over to the T&E team, the testing and evaluation team, where we were evaluating lots of different products to carry. That was last year primarily. And then as we moved to dissolve that team, as people were kind of moving throughout the company, we were trying to reassess our T&E philosophy. Brandon came over to be a full-time content brand representative. What was that transition like when you went from T&E, like customer service T&E, but now it's, hey, you're going to be on camera, you're going to be representing us, you're getting a YouTube video, you're going to be on our channel. Like, what was that kind of like?
So when I started working at T.REX, I never assumed to be on camera. It was like actually one of the last things I wanted to do, because I just didn't think it was like in the playing cards. And also, never mind. I'll leave that. I won't mention anything in that realm. But so the transition to T&E it's kind of seamless, because after 30 days of being in CS, I started doing T&E. I was helping Michael out, who was running it. So when I got to T&E, it was like the dream job. I was like loving it, because you're shooting a lot and getting paid to do it.
Just getting all this equipment to test.
And it didn't really have a budget at the time, even though we technically did.
For like 4 months,
and then, it's like 6 months into it, started helping with camera stuff, getting on camera. And then it was like the first Black Friday. Actually, it was like the first big thing. So it was kind of a seamless transition to be a brand representative. And from there, I just started to run with it. It's definitely still a learning curve, trying to figure out how to communicate well on camera and whatnot. I did public speak as part of my job as being an instructor. I spoke to 20 to 30 people every day for hours at a time. So talking to people is much different than talking on camera.
Absolutely.
There is a little more forgiveness with being on camera, though, because we can just be like, all right, let's stop. Not right now,
exactly,
obviously. But like, hey, let's redo that real quick. No, the transition's seamless, just trying to figure out how to, again, communicate well and inspire and educate.
Yeah. I remember you mentioning to me early on that you were doing some practice off hours What did your practice look like for on-camera
Super cringe.
stuff? It may not be. It may not be cringe. What did it look like?
So I had to get good at a couple things. One, talking on camera, and two was shooting. Right, I was not a good shooter when I showed up the T.REX. That was one thing we didn't talk about, the training aspect. But anyway.
we should actually go back and address
for sure.
that. It's for the transition.
So I would go to the range before work hours. I had kind of an ammo allotment for T&E, and as I was testing and evaluating things, I would train. And so I would train and talk about my training to my phone, basically, and then I would watch myself. So
that's not cringe at all. That's like the best practice training you can do.
I didn't post any of it, so.
Even better. No, that's a great way to practice. The difference with me is I did practice on camera, 2 people, and they had to sit through the cringe doing live streams. That was the only difference for me. But you were kind to everyone and recorded it, didn't publish it. I actually just dumped that on them. But you did mention training for the MARSOC military stuff compared to the civilian side when you came over. Let's talk about that. Let's dive into that. What did your explain a little bit about your flat range shooting experience in the military, in MARSOC, your train ups. We've talked a little bit about that, the qual and things like that. Explain some of that, and then we'll talk about some of the comparisons between that and what you did once you got out.
Yeah. So the training was pretty basic, to say the least. It was not. There's not a heavy emphasis on small arms because majority of the work we do is with heavy weapons. So we care more about guys' proficiency with machine guns and mortars and rockets and stuff like that. So when it comes to flat range training, we want guys to be safe and effective in a shoot house. That's probably the best way I can explain it. And that doesn't take the highest level of proficiency. It takes a high level of accountability. So safety is paramount, basically, is what I'm saying. So we want guys just to be safe. So when it comes to flat range training, no, you're not getting sub 1R or sub 3 second 1R1s with your rifle or anything. But guys are really safe and they're really accountable for their shots. So when I came over to our side of things, we ran that USPSA match like a month after I started. I think I actually finished last.
You did. I wasn't going to say it.
It was mainly because of the no shoots, though. So we talked about accountability.
I
was trying to push the speed.
Yeah.
We, on the civilian side, we're just shooting faster and we're more proficient. So again, the training emphasis in the military is not on small arms. It's on other skills aside from heavy weapons. So like my job and other things like that. So.
Now, that's something that a lot of people are starting to wake up to that I'm seeing that, hey, just because someone's a special operations guy, a Green Beret, a MARSOC dude, or whatever, their small arms shooting may not be that great. It probably isn't that great unless there's someone who took a great interest in that on the side. When you were on deployment, this is actually a great question because I've met guys who've gone on deployment and they can shoot every day. They shoot for 3 hours when they get up. They have a ton of ammunition. They have a little range in their fob, and they are dumping 1,000 rounds every day while they're waiting for a hit or a mission or whatever it happens to be. Were you able to do live fire training on the deployments that you did, and what did that tempo look like?
It was unlimited, actually. So as much like those guys, we had a huge. Again, there was kind of an expectation of the Iraq mission being like Afghanistan, so we had a huge allotment of small arms ammunition. So, and we had a 200-meter flat range, probably about 50 meters or so wide on my first deployment. My second deployment, we had massive range, like staccato range, massive. So we had long range.
Shooting into like another country or something.
Yeah,
basically.
literally like.
Not quite.
we may or may not have test fired Mark 19 rounds over the berm into possibly people.
Places.
No.
It is how it is.
No, the range was huge, so we had a ton of ammunition, and I was one of the only guys that actually went out there and trained. Dudes were just so taxed from our op tempo. We were out 3 to 5 days a week doing ops, and a lot of those times we were not sleeping overnight. So I went out and trained I think it was probably about once a week on my second deployment. And the first deployment, op tempo was much slower. It was probably 2 or 3 times a week. And I was just blasting, no training objective. I was just having a good time.
Just pulling triggers.
Dumping Mark 18s on full auto just because
you have unlimited ammo and just Oh geez, but did you have anyone loading your mags?
No.
Oh, so you have that at T.REX.
We had it, yeah. We did it. We had a group effort. We would keep ammo cans loaded or full of
with the stripper mags. Clips, and then you jam.
No, we had mags just put in ammo cans. That's what we carry because aluminum mags would fit in them.
Oh yes, of course. Oh, that's cool. So you shot that match, and it sounds like that was an inciting incident for you because you saw where you were at compared to other people at T.REX, and that was people all throughout the company. That was production staff, customer service.
Yep.
I've been the lead shooter at the company for a long time, not anymore, but you shot with all of us, and then you were like, hey, this isn't good. I need to put in the work, and then you you hit it hard. I mean, you were training how many times a week after that point?
It was a minimum once, realistically twice, and that's not counting dry fire. So I will say it doesn't take long to get from like a very average level to a high level, especially with dry fire. It's literally 30 days of disciplined dry fire. You can be at least an M-class shooter in USPSA standard.
Yeah, which is what you're doing now. You shot the latest USPSA match that you shot. You placed on the classifier. It was a movement. It was one of the newer ones with movement involved. What did you classify on that one?
It was a high GM. So GM was a 9.1 hit factor, and I shot a 9.9.
Jeez.
Now that was my type of that was my stage.
Oh yeah,
that was for me, and it was the only stage I shot well. So I guess the takeaway is I can shoot up to a GM. I'm just not consistent there.
Right.
It would probably be
depending
high
on the type of course of fire that you're dealing with. And you've shot how many USPSA matches now?
That's only my second.
Second match, GM classifier, and you placed overall at that match. It was
like 9th or something like that. I don't remember exactly.
There's a lot of folks there. Yeah. So transitioning over, because I definitely want to get into another activity that you've been getting into since showing up here at the company, and that is the tactical games. So I have a photo right here of you down in Texas, I believe, carrying some weight. I've been working out now for a year and a half, but I don't know a lot of things about weightlifting, so I have no idea how much weight you're hauling right here.
So I think that
it looks like a lot.
I think it was 165 pounds or 175 pounds. It was one of the two. Yeah. So there was 2 of those. This was part of a team event. Michael was my teammate. He got hurt during this stage actually. So he made me carry both of these by myself.
Nice. Baller. I like it. So as far as tactical games, go ahead and explain for the folks at home, people who are listening in or here on YouTube, what the tactical games is and why you were interested in competing.
So shooting sports, it's another shooting sport. We're all familiar with USPSA or PRS. It's kind of the 2 big ones, at least the 2 big categories, pistol shooting and precision rifle shooting. Tactical games is another shooting sport, but it brings another emphasis to it, and that is fitness and high-level fitness on that note. So the shooting on tactical games is different. That's all I'm going to say. It's not that some people will say it's low-class shooting or not high-level shooting. I just say it's different. So I like Lucas and I just talked about. I did classify as a GM on my last USPSA match. I can shoot dynamic carbine pretty well. I would say that's probably what I'm best at when it comes to shooting. And I'm middle of the pack in tactical game shooting. So the shooting there is just different. It's all awkward positions, shooting odd-shaped targets. So it just requires a different type of skill set to shoot there. Now the 2-gun stages I have been doing extremely well on because it's just, that's kind of the shooting that I do. But the heavy emphasis at tactical games, aside from the shooting, is fitness. It is scored 50-50, so your shooting is half your score and fitness is your other half. But the thing is you have to be able to do the fitness to get to your shooting. So if you show up and you've never worked out in a day of your life, you may not actually shoot the whole match because you have to work out to get to most of the shooting in the match. So that's what I appreciate about tactical games, is the fitness side and combining it with shooting, and they do it well.
Yeah, I've got some other pictures right up here, but the thing that it kind of reminds me of is qual shooting. So when I shoot a qual, whether it's a military qual or law enforcement qual, I shoot it much more controlled and consistent. Like I'll look at it and understand, okay, this is what passing is. I don't have to run at 100%. Like I just have to shoot it consistently. Yep. I have to get all my hits, especially if it's a qual. That's a 100% like hit ratio sort of thing. So I have not shot a tactical games event, or at least a normal one. I've got the sniper match next week, which that's going to be super fun. But that's kind of what it reminds me of. So in this photo right here, you're carrying, what is that, 100 pounds?
150-pound sandbag.
Oh, geez.
So with tactical games, tactical games, the cool thing about the fitness part, it's all kind of CrossFit, high-intensity interval type training. I mean, that's essentially exactly what it is, but they use odd weights. So you're not going to see barbells. If you do see a barbell, it's going to be an axle bar, which is a fat grip. But majority of the stuff is sandbags, which is just awkward weight that tests your functional fitness. So they like to do things that challenge your fitness in ways you've never prepared for, is the best way I can put it. So you can't really game tactical games. Obviously, the more you do it, the more you train, you can get better at the certain movements and whatnot. But almost every time you show up to a tactical games event, you're going to see something you've never done before. And that's the thing I appreciate about the fitness the most, because I'm a power lifter. I can move a lot of weight for my body weight. And there's guys here that I know I'm stronger than, but they're moving heavier weight faster than I am. And this is one of the examples of weird barricades. They love tank traps. So you'll shoot off of all of the legs, and they'll tell you to.
Oh, that's how they do it. Oh.
Yeah, so they'll be like, you have to shoot on. You can only shoot off each position once on this stage or whatever. Sometimes
that's awkward height. I can already see like that is such an awkward position, especially for me being tall. That would suck.
Yeah, the key to these is your fitness needs to be at a point where you can exert yourself only 80%. So when you get to the
You're
shooting,
good to go.
Yeah.
you can blast. Then handgun, obviously, and that there, I'm assuming after all the movement of weight and whatnot, what gets worse, the rifle shooting or the pistol shooting?
My last match, I shot pistol better. So,
interesting. Okay.
The range, they didn't have the capability to shoot that far at the last match. The farthest we shot was 120 meters, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So the rifle targets, they just made extremely small. Generally, tactical games, they will do 4 MOA targets for rifle. So no smaller than that, which means even if you have your mil-spec gun, if you miss, it's basically your fault. With the pistol shooting, they push the limits on pistols. You'll shoot at 10 meters on half-inch squares. They call it red dot torture, actually. So that's why you see a lot of like 2011s and Atlas guns competing, because they're just a little bit easier to shoot on those smaller targets compared to Glocks.
Jeez. Well, I've got my first Tactical Games event starting next week, and my loadout is 78 pounds, and I've got to ruck that 4 miles on day 2, run up a bunch of stairs, and shoot precision out to 800 meters. So that's going to be fun. Are you enjoying the Tactical Games? And you've got another one coming up, it sounds like.
Yep. So I go a week after you. So it is the most fun I've had competing in anything. So the thing about Tactical Games, yes, it's expensive. That's the first thing people generally notice. Yeah. It's a pricey event, but it's a full 2-day event. You're competing all day for 2 days, and plus they're giving away like the craziest awards. So like guys that are winning in Elite and Tactical are getting Night Force optics, and they had e-bikes they were giving away in Texas. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's just extremely strenuous. It's no joke.
Jeez, it looks. My plan and my hope is to attend a normal event next year. We will see. Got to get some fitness stuff, up to date. So I'm working out 3 days a week, and then all my cardio, running around with kit, usually another day a week. So like 4 days a week right now. But you're working out 2 times a day. Is that correct?
Yep. So I follow the Tactical Games training program almost to a T now. So we actually have some Tactical Games YouTube content coming out hopefully this weekend. All right, I kind of talk about that a little bit, and since that video I've actually shifted a little bit to focus more on training specifically for Tactical Games. So like I said, I'm a power lifter, so I squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press. It's my kind of where the foundation of my training is. And since I started doing Tactical Games, that doesn't translate all that well.
Right.
So I'm focusing more on that. So the way it works is I work a lot, and I'm also a dad, so I don't have the time to do these 2-hour-long workouts. They're
2 hours?
Sometimes. Wow. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're 30 minutes, but majority of the training program, it's about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So I split that into 2 workouts a day, basically, and that's Monday through Saturday.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, we have a bunch of questions that are flying in. I'm looking at like 14 or 15 that have been selected. But before we actually get to the Q&A, we have to talk about this show's sponsor. This show is sponsored by T.REX ARMS. That's right. Once again, we are sponsoring ourselves. And I mention it on every show, but I want to follow it up again with saying that the reason that we are able to produce some of this content and we're not censoring ourselves based on the types of content, the types of videos that we create, is because we are entirely funding ourselves. We're not relying on monetization through YouTube. We're not relying on ad revenue, which is one reason a lot of content creators out there are having to adjust their content so that they can stay monetized, because that's their cash flow. And recently, YouTube actually, I think it's starting June 18th or something like that, they're actually initiating some new policies that is going to make it even harder for content creators to stay monetized. In some cases, some content creators may have to actually adjust their content, water down their message a little bit, maybe not show certain things in regards to firearms. But here at T.REX ARMS, we don't have to worry about that. And we don't have to worry about that because you guys support us, support this channel, support the content that we are creating by purchasing products at trex-arms.com. And the product that I want to highlight for this week, which is new, and we've already sold, I think, like at this time, it's probably 490 right now, is the new TLR7 HLX. This is a very small little pistol light. And what's remarkable about this light is it's starting to have the same output, sort of specifications as some of the larger lights that have been on the market for quite a while. So it is quite bright, as you will see. And it is also has a very small form factor. So you put that on a Glock 19, it's going to stick a little bit past the muzzle. A Glock 17, it's flush fit. We ordered 2,500 of these for the first batch, and they are selling very fast. But the cool thing is, weapon light technology now is just so effective that there's really no reason not to throw one of these lights on a handgun, whether it's sitting in a drawer in your house in the kitchen or it's something that you actually carry. Compared to lights, say 20 years ago that were huge, full metal, weighed a lot, were massive, nobody made holsters for them. And I have some of those lights, like old Surefires that go on 1911s. Like putting a light on a handgun back then was a decision. Like it was something you had to think about. Is it really a good idea based on size, weight, and how it's going to affect the shootability of the gun? But with the technology that we have today that we should be thankful for, we can have just all this capability on a gun for not a lot of money. These are like $160. Throw it onto a handgun and then be able to see what we're shooting at if it's dark or we're in a dark place, and we have to do that. We also have holsters that obviously support this light. The downside to this, because again, we're very transparent about our product and other people's products, which upsets some companies out there, is the snoot for the light. The length of the light is a little bit longer. So if you have an existing TLR7A holster, which is what I carry with, I'm pretty sure you carry a TLR7 Alpha, typically speaking, you are going to have to get a new holster. And that kind of sucks. I mean, it really does, because the light is now a larger light. It's not going to fit your standard holster you might have already had, so you're going to have to buy something new. But the good news is, when you do purchase a new holster from us or another company, the existing TLR7A will fit inside. So that same holster, in this case I have one of our new Raptors, I could take my TLR7A, which is on my standard handgun, and that will still work in this holster, and then I could have another handgun with this light right here. So that's what we have. This launched today. It's extremely impressive. It is very close to what a TLR1 HL is doing. It is very close to an X300 Ultra. It is cheaper, it is smaller, and the thing that I like about it the most are the pressure switches. It is an incredible light. So with all that said, with all the sponsor stuff out of the way, we can now get into the questions. And the first one we have, and this is an excellent one from Mr. Landon, is when can we have a Havoc episode on defense budget? Go over how much % of income to allocate. Heck, have Dave Ramsey on LOL. So this is a great question. This is something that we've actually touched on in the past. We're not going to get into it too much right now, but I will work on preparing some materials, some research, look for the right guest to bring on and actually get into this, because it is something that should be talked about, because there are people out there who want to know, is it 3%, 6%, 10%? In Brandon's case, I mean, what % were you spending on weapons when you were in the military? Or getting out, I should say.
Like my own budget?
Yeah.
More than it should have been. Still
like 30%, 40%. I mean, for us, it's a little different because we do this for a job, and so we're like buying our own stuff and doing things, but it's probably unrealistically high. Spencer says, could the Med-H go on a speed belt?
Oh, that's a good question.
That is a great question.
So the original design cue for Med-H actually was to allow it to do everything except for Molly. So there was originally a belt pass-through on the Med-H, but given the layout of the medical pouch, so with how everything's laid out inside there, it just didn't make sense to go on a belt, so we chopped that off. So it's just a hanger, a dangler, and a fanny pack now. So no, it cannot go on a speed belt. I mean, I guess you could if you really tried, but it's not recommended.
Interesting. This guy asks, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, did Brandon ever work on the Air Force ISR, specifically Draco U-28s?
No, those level of drones are way out of my league, so no, I did not.
You did not ever touch those? I don't know if it's...
Those are like legit drone pilots that have like insignias on their chest and whatnot.
Oh, interesting. Fine. This next question from Double Tube Fan 5, if I'm even saying your name right. Brandon, in what area do you feel you have grown the most in your life? What area do you feel is still a work in progress?
Man, that is a deep question to come in on a live show.
Yeah.
Through faith, maturity has grown quite a bit. So I don't see the world as the world revolving around me anymore. I see it as the opposite. So that's definitely the biggest, and I would say that's probably still the area I need the most growth in, is a little bit of humility and selflessness. I think we all need that. So.
Well, and I have one point that I want to make on that is you mentioned something way early on in the show, that being on camera it wasn't something you were particularly interested in doing, and it wasn't something you thought were in the cards. And when I learned that, because that's always something that I'm looking for in people, especially if we're kind of scouting them out to be on content, is the first thing needs to be they don't want to do it. Like, that really is the first step, because if someone is really wanting to be on camera, they really want to get in front of people, they really want to, they love the sound of their voice or whatever it is, when you put the spotlight on them and when they start getting, the attention of folks such as all of you in here, it is very hard to handle that without growing your ego, narcissism, arrogance, all of these different things, which is a it's been a struggle for me ever since I've started this. I mean, it is a full-time job practically in just staving some of that away and staying grounded in principle, conviction, and not letting the thousands of adoring fans and various feedback that you get, either good or bad, actually affecting you. So that was one thing I noticed about you, having conversations with you early on, that I was like, hey, this dude has a level of humility and maturity that is going to flourish when he starts presenting content and communicating to the masses. And I just think that's something that I want to point out, and it's something that people should definitely understand. This guy asks, Peter asks, Brandon, what has been your favorite project at T.REX Arms so far?
The optic testing that we did. So we did, it was my first YouTube video, actually, I think on the main channel, was optics evaluation. So the project wasn't the video itself, is the first big testing and evaluation project that we did in the T&E department. So I had some help with it, had a couple guys help me, I did lead it, but that was a ton of fun because we ended up bringing a lot of new products to the website based on that evaluation, and we learned a lot about optics, and it was pretty expensive, and we have a white paper typed up on the findings we did, kind of briefly explained in that YouTube video, but that was definitely the most fun project we had. I just learned a lot through it. So
that's awesome. Creative video too.
Yeah.
This guy, the Dank Side, excellent name. Question for Brandon. I'm on my way out the door of the Marine Corps myself. Can you speak about your transition experience and how much do you miss being in? I guess how much do you miss being in? Since we talked some about that already.
Yeah, I don't actually miss being in the Marine Corps at all. So this is a topic that's for another conversation, but I'll mention it briefly, and that is being a Christian and being in the Marine Corps is very difficult to do at the same time. I don't think, this is my personal belief, but I don't know if you can be a genuine Christian and be in the Marine Corps at the same time. Just to fit into the Marine Corps culture and to be a Christian is very difficult. So when I left, that was about the same time I was saved. I was very happy to get out and, again, get to focus on my faith, which is most important in life.
This guy, same thing. This seems to be a theme from a lot of folks in here. He says, got out about 10 months ago. Particularly as a Christian, I'm trying to better myself, but I'm having a hard time letting go of my rough around edges Marine Corps ways. Any advice?
Get in the Word every day. That's the best way. That's the best advice I can give you. If you try and better yourself based on yourself, you're not going to get any better. You're just going to, you're going to sharpen or continue to dull those rough edges. So my best advice is get in Scripture every day, read it, study it, get on a plan, and continue reading. So that's how God speaks to you. He's literally His word written down. So.
That's awesome. And again, on the exact same vein, Ramon asks, Brandon, would you ever go back to the military, even with the current administration?
Absolutely not. So part of the reason, well, it's not the reason why I got out, but as I was getting out, the COVID vaccine was being mandated, and I would refuse the vaccine. So I was getting pushed out either way, regardless if I didn't get medically separated or retired or not. My wife was in the same exact boat. My wife did 14 years, and she's a Marine Corps officer, or was a Marine Corps officer. So when it came to putting pen to paper, when the vaccine was being threatened, they were saying, you're going to lose all your benefits. You want to lose all your benefits over a vaccine? And I was like, you think I need these benefits? Absolutely not. So no, I would not join the military now. Now, if something happens and this nation truly needed to be defended, and I mean truly needed to be defended, we can have that conversation later. And
I'm personally curious, this is a question just on my end, our country needs to be defended. Are you talking about something where forces are starting to encroach on our soil, so the heartland, are we considered a motherland, or we're not the fatherland, I guess, but they're encroaching on the heartland of the United States of America? Is that kind of what you're talking about, some sort of direct action against our country?
Yeah,
physically?
Something like that, or there's definitely, what the United States does well, and I know a lot of people aren't really too big fans of our foreign affairs, but we do help people. The United States does go overseas and helps people, and if there's something where we truly need to be involved in for the betterment of the world, then again, another conversation. So.
Excellent. Yeah, it's probably like 10 shows worth of content.
Yeah.
So this guy asks, what is a good template if the military is no longer an option for shoot, move, communicate / sustain competence and agency? Is there some universal standard for accountability and pressure? You first.
That's a tough question.
It is. I think we get some bangers on here. It's great.
I think that's something we're here at T.REX we're trying to work on, is push out some standards that, as any civilian anywhere in the country can go shoot and try to attain, and be like, hey, you know what? I'm at this level. So, no, there's not right now.
There's not. No.
Yeah.
And I was on a live show yesterday on Instagram with a guy. It was just last minute. I'm at my computer. He invites me in, and I'm like, sure, I'll get in here, we'll talk. And one thing I pointed out is there's so many civilians out there, myself included, who want to do a certain type of training, like a scenario-based, course or something. Like I've seen them in the military, but there's even one that happens around our building. MARSOC guys come in, they halo in near the range. Actually, they ruck all the way to the. It's not an airfield, but that's what they're using it as, our little regional airport, and they conduct a 2 or 3 day operation there. And each time it's happened, I've been out of town, which is hilarious. But so they do all this stuff. I've talked to the OP4 guys that come out, and they've been to the building for a tour. And I see that, and I'm like, man, I would love to do some similar civilian, thing with a scenario. But the fact of the matter is, what I was talking about on this live show is, we don't know what the scenario is going to look like. We have no way of knowing what to exactly train for, whether it's the LA riots type situation or just something radically different. So it's very hard to create some sort of training environment when we don't have a specific scenario to train around. And that's why you have all these guys putting on camo, running around in the woods, and it's like, well, what are the woods for? Are you using the woods to maneuver around a town or a city like the one that, where T.REX Arms is based? Like, what are you doing in the woods? Is it to hide from government drones? Are you trying to just maneuver because you don't want to be on the roads, because you want to be inconspicuous? Like, there's not a lot of why or a specific scenario being trained for. Whereas in the military, you guys have specific scenarios that people are concocting, and you have resources where you can have tons of OP4 and just tons of stuff going on. And so it's tough because there is no good solution for civilians to train at that level, because we simply just don't have that. But there are certain skills and things people can and should be doing so that when we do have a scenario that arises, whether it's a summer of love type situation or something, and we're simply just defending a certain point, our business or a friend's business, which again, that's a very specific type of operation, you can then take those skills you've been practicing, marksmanship, communication, a level of fitness standard of some sort, and then apply it to that scenario and then adjust on the fly. And I think that's something that a lot of civilians and citizens don't really understand. Like, there's just a level of training we can't do right now in peacetime. Like, we can't. There's no way. I don't know kind of what your thoughts are on some of that. Yeah, so
to give you guys an idea of the OP4, so basically the OP4 is just a unit or a group of people that role plays as your enemy during training. In MARSOC, there's literally a group of guys that have created a fake terrorist organization, and they role play, and the information that they use to conduct pre-deployment training for one team rolls in to the next team. So they do an actual turnover for a deployment, and this scenario rolls continuously. So the scenario has been going on since 2008. So these guys have been in role essentially this whole time, and the scenario keeps evolving. So when you go back to train and you have this OP4, the intel information is, at this point, 16 years old. So that's how in depth the OP4 is for the military. It's pretty wild, and that's not going to happen in the civilian world. It's not. But on that point, this guy asks, are there training ideas / fundamentals that the military is falling behind in that the civilian market is ahead of? Yeah, shooting. I would agree. Yeah, marksmanship, basic weapons handling and stuff. I would say the military is, for the most part, you'll see videos and pictures of people being unsafe doing stupid stuff, but that's very rare in the military. They harp safety hardcore. So aside from the safety aspect, civilians are shooting better, in my opinion, just about every front. So even snipers, the good snipers in the military come out and then they increase their skills through competition shooting. So, do you think the military, and this is something that I've talked to some guys about, there are specific schools in the military that I'm aware of where you shoot a no-shoot target, you're out. You're just booted from the school. And I hear that standard and I'm like, wow, that's a high standard, that's really great. And then I'll talk to instructors from another school that does something similar, a CQB school. And there's kind of this idea that, no, actually some of that standard of being too safe is actually creating issues, and guys are now going much slower than they need to be versus building confidence and speed and refining it over time. Did you ever see in your career, man, this is
we're being too safe about this. This is actually holding people back from a training perspective. Like, we need to go a little bit faster, do things a little bit differently.
My first CQB package was that. So everyone was terrified to go into the house the first time because not because they were scared to shoot inside, it was because they were scared to make a mistake. So everyone was going extremely slow, getting stuck in hallways and that sort of thing. So yeah, it definitely goes both ways. Now, generally speaking, those high accountability courses are people being evaluated for a leadership role of some kind. So like CQB leaders. So if they do make a mistake, you have to move fast and you have to be accountable. So
yeah, no, that's really good. It's definitely something that could use more conversation. This guy says, quick question, guys. As someone without a major platform, how would you go about tackling some of the misconceptions mainstream media pushes about the Second Amendment and our community itself? Brandon, you go first.
I think you've answered this question on about every live show you've been on. You have to, you actually answer it really well. So, and I'm not going to be able to answer as well as you do, but you have to be the example for the people around you. You don't have to have a big platform to make a difference. Generally, even people with large platforms, where we have thousands of people watching our stuff, if we make the difference on 0.5% of those people, that's a big deal. So what I'm saying is you interact with more people than that face to face than we do on our platform. So that's how you make the difference, is the people you interact with.
Yeah.
Best way to put it.
You can definitely have, like, outside of this live show, I mean, you guys have access to maybe 1% of our lives and our ideas just from following us on social media and seeing videos on YouTube. Like, the fact that we're doing a live show with no edits, you're seeing another 1 to 2% of who we are and what we think. I mean, you've learned a lot about Brandon on this show, and I've learned some things as well. But you having an in-depth conversation with someone in person is like, that is nothing. We can't do anything like that unless we go to a live event. And even then, at live events like meet and greets, which I've done, I mean, I'm talking to people for 30 seconds, maybe a minute before I'm like, hey, I've got to go to this next person. And it's just still not the kind of interaction that you can have with someone at your local church or someone at the job that you work at, where you can get to know them. It's kind of like a TV show versus like watching a movie. Like, you have like a 5-season experience with that person, like getting to know them and talking to them and, maybe getting them interested in firearms, versus we're like a feature film, maybe like a B movie, You get like 2 hours of us, maybe an hour and a half, maybe it's a comedy, maybe it's a horror movie, depending on the content you watch, or maybe some gun tubers. And that's it, that's all you get. You really don't see a lot of character development, you're not getting a lot of information, and that's just how it is. But this is probably the best question that we have gotten so far, and we have to wrap it up in 3 minutes. Civilian tactical, what is the biggest mistake you've both made in your careers, and what did it teach you?
You first.
I'll go first. So the biggest mistake for me was avoiding hard conversations. Was probably in the last 10 years, there have been a number of times in my career with team members specifically, or family members, because I do, there's 2 family members involved as owners here at T.REX ARMS, and there have just been some very hard decisions and discussions that I've needed to have with team members about, how they're operating at work, whether I need to take accountability for something that I did or didn't do, and it's my fault, and I need to be responsible for that. I made a lot of mistakes, particularly 5-6 years ago, just with people skills, and there were a lot of issues from that because I didn't man up and have those hard conversations. And I actually want to dive into that more in a future episode, so I won't go too much into it. But it was me just being scared. I didn't want to upset the relationship. I didn't want to, seem weak, maybe. A little bit of insecurity going on there. And so just not being a man and having those conversations. And I'm trying to fix that now. So 2 minutes. What's yours?
It's going to go back to what I said earlier, and it's putting myself first on everything. So I was very good at my job. I was SOCOM Communicator of the Year for 1 year, and I thought the world revolved around me, and I thought everyone was there to support me, and that destroyed relationships. People definitely helped me get to the positions I needed to be in, and they were very, very graceful in the manner. But that had to change before I left the Marine Corps, and I'm glad it's changing, because the world does not revolve around me.
No,
so.
We are mere ants and bugs. So. Yeah. No, that's really good. Well, with all that said, guys, Brandon, thanks for coming on. Thank you for being willing to come sit in the studio with all these lights. It's scary. It's kind of with all these cameras that are moving. It's crazy stuff. But thanks for coming on the show and sharing your testimony as well as just your life story that you've had so far. There's many more years to go and many more experiences to have, and we'll have you on again to talk about what's going on. So that'll be great. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll be back next Wednesday. We'll have something fun concocted by then, And for those of you that are listening to the podcast, please do consider joining live. It's just a completely different experience entirely. You could see cool photos, you could see what we're talking about, and it's just you get to join in with the chat and have lovely conversation, I'm sure, is what's been going on for the last hour. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys next time.